And that's where we're picking up today. So today, it's going to be a little different. You're going to need a Bible, I'm telling you, because I'm coming at you live today. I'm telling you, it's going to be a lot. So not long. I'm not saying that, hopefully. I just mean a lot. So you're going to need the Bible to read along. It's not, the verses aren't going to all be up there this time because we're covering a lot, but you don't have to turn a whole lot of places. You're only turning in one place, Exodus, and in Exodus chapter 20, excuse me, hold on, let me get there, 21, I should say, 21. And the title kind of here is "And Justice for All." So, and you'll see where I'm coming from with that. If you ever go to Louisiana, you may need to know this. It may not matter to you, but you may need to know this. In Louisiana, you can be fined $500 if you send a pizza to a place that did not order it. So if you give them an address and it's the wrong address and they deliver the pizza to somebody else, they can fine you $500 for that. In Maine, it's illegal to keep your Christmas decorations up after June 14th. So January 14th. So you have 14 days plus a few to get them down, or you can be fined. In Maryland, you can be fined $10 for having a sleeveless shirt in a public park, wearing a sleeveless shirt. Somebody might appreciate that. I don't know. All true laws, they all exist. Some of them are silly, but enforcing them is not necessarily that easy or that silly. Maybe y'all seen this viral video that's going around right now of the woman who gets pulled over in the traffic scenario where the cop's accusing her of texting with her right hand while driving, and she raises her right hand and she has none. Her arm is cut off right here. She has no right hand. But the guy keeps going at her, like, I saw you doing it, and then if it couldn't get worse, makes her raise her hand and swear to God. So she raises no hand and swears to God that she was not holding the phone in the hand that doesn't exist. It's unreal. And that sounds stupid, but sometimes those kind of things escalate and even somebody gets hurt or killed. And that's what's led to crazy things in the past, like defund the police. Maybe y'all remember that, some of you. But is that the solution? Like, that turns our world into the purge, if you've seen that. Not that I'm encouraging it. I'm just saying that makes, no law the law. And my point is that law matters. And it only matters if it's respected. So if it's not respected, it's not a law. So it has to be both. And here's kind of your main point. I'm telling you, we're going to look at a lot today, but it's all in one place. God acts justly for all people and without bias. So we're responsible to live that way also. If you are a Christian in this room, you have a responsibility to live the same way for all people and without bias. And you're going to see that. Look at verse 1 of 21. It says, "Now these are the rules that you shall set before them," God speaking to Moses. "Them is the people of God. This is for them to govern themselves by, not force it upon the world." Their job was not to force the law on the world, not even the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments were not for the whole world. The 10 Commandments were for Israel. But the whole point of that was that it would draw people to that. It would draw people to Israel. It would draw people to see, by the way, Israel lived different and recognize who their God was. So we're going to read through these today. I'm doing this different than I normally do. That's why I'm telling you need a Bible, because I'm doing it different. We're going to read through a chunk of these today. And the reason I chose to do that is because if you're like me, you've always grown up hearing that the law is boring, or the law is bad, or the law is old, or archaic, or horrible. Or the one I heard the most, and I still hear it all the time, is thank God we're not under the law anymore. Thank God we're under grace. We are under grace, but I want to change the way you think about that. I want you to look at the law, understand how to read it, and understand that God hasn't changed. Culture has. God hasn't changed a bit. Culture is what's changed. For instance, we don't have a bride price anymore. You don't pay a dad a certain price for his daughter. But we also don't value virginity anymore either. Just being flat honest. All right? So this is about what God was telling them, who God was telling them to be within their culture And we can look at that and understand maybe God's telling us how to be a certain way in our culture. Does that make sense? And I'll say one other thing before we get into this, and we're going to go quick through it, but I'll say one other thing before we get too far into this. Keep in mind, why would you celebrate not being under a law that was given by God? Just think about that a minute. It was given by God. It was a gift. And I know there's the death penalty in here. You'll see that. If the death penalty scares you or you think it's too hard, don't commit the crime. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. Just don't commit the crime, you know? All right? So go to verse 2, and let's go into this. And I'm going to read through. We'll take some pauses, but I'm going to read through and just explain as we go through quickly, because I want you to feel the freedom that's in this law, not the weight, okay? So you might already see the heading of slaves. You might go, oh, this ought to be good. Okay, well, here we go. Verse 2. When you buy a Hebrew slave, okay, so one of your own people, he shall serve 6 years. In the 7th year, he will what? I'm making sure y'all reading with me. Go out what? Free for what? Nothing. Nothing, okay? If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife goes out with him. If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. So that means that not that they can't ever leave, but that they are within that time period allotted until they can. Verse 5, but if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife and my children, I'm not going out for free, then his master shall be with him, bring him to God, and shall bring him to the door of the doorpost, and the master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his forever. All that means is give him an earring. That is that simple. Just means, stick a hole in his ear and put an earring on him, and that's marking him as belonging to this master. What we have here, listen to me, is rules for slaves' rights. Where is that ever in all of history, anywhere, has there been slaves' rights? The rights of slaves. And for the record, God's not endorsing slavery here as we think of it, and I'll come back to that in a minute. What we might call this is indentured servanthood or even welfare. Did you see that? After a period of time, they're on their own again. They're free, and they ain't got to pay to be. It's almost like a welfare system to help your people get through if they need something. In Paul's day, Paul would address slaves being obedient to their masters and masters being kind to their slaves, but Paul wasn't endorsing slavery either. Paul was just saying that if you are in that situation, be Christ-like. Paul also talks about how we were all slaves to sin that led to death, but now we're slaves to Christ. Says the very thing. And some of your Bible translations, because people don't like the weight of what that English word means now, some of your Bible translations translate that slave word that Paul uses to bondservant. It says we're bondservants to Christ, because that sounds smoother than the word slave. But it's the same thing. And that's what's being talked about back here in the Old Testament. Let's keep going. Look back at verse 7. So when a man sells his daughter he's still talking about slaves, but a slightly different scenario. If a man sells his daughter as a slave, this means that they have extreme debt and they have to do something to relieve that or to do whatever. So he allows his daughter to be indebted to somebody, to servitude, all right? She shall not go out as male slaves do. Now people look at that and go, oh, she's less than a man. No, she's more than a man. That doesn't mean less respected. That means more protected. She doesn't get treated like just anybody. She is someone's daughter now. And in your care, you might see master slave, but she's in your care now, and you're going to take care of her differently. And then it says, verse 8, if she doesn't please her master, who has designated her for himself, then let her be redeemed. What that means is he needs to make her affordable so dad can come buy her back. Sounds like the master's getting ripped off a little bit here. If he don't like her, then he's got to make her affordable for dad to come get her back. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people because he's broken faith with her, if that's the case. If he designates for his son, in other words, if he allows her to be married to his son, he shall deal with her as a daughter-in-law, as we would say. So she's family now. If he takes another wife, so if his son, though, has taken her, but takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish her food or her clothing or her marital rights. In other words, this is not an endorsement of polygamy. This is saying if it happens, same rules apply. So don't think you can get out of it by marrying somebody else. If you've brought this woman into your house and you've married her, she is now yours, and that's that. Verse 11, if he does not do these three things for her, she shall go out for what? Nothing. Without payment, money. Free to go. Skip down to verse 20 because I'm putting the slave stuff together. Verse 20, when a man strikes a slave, male or female, with a rod, and the slave dies under his hand, he shall be avenged. The slave shall be avenged. Think about that a minute. But if the slave survives a day or two, that sounds funny, but if he survives a day or two, he's not to be avenged, for the slave is his money. What he means by that is you have injured that slave has served you and provided for your income in whatever way, has helped take care of your home, provided for your income, and you have hurt them so they can't work. So you have now lost money, and you have now lost service in that sense, and in that way, there's no cause for action because you hurt yourself, is what they're saying. But then this is also not an endorsement for beating with rods. People go, oh, see, the Bible teaches beating. No, it doesn't. It says when that happens, this is what's to be done. And if you skip down, again, I'm putting these together. And this is how I can tell you it's not an endorsement. Look at verse 26. When a man strikes the eye of his slave, male or female, and destroys it or injures it where he can't see, he shall let the slave what? Go free because of his eye. If he knocks out a tooth of his slave, male or female, he shall let the slave what? Go free. In other words, the penalty is very serious. You whip a rod out, you better be real careful, or you're going to be letting this slave go free in about 2 seconds. Slavery of foreign people, so this has all been the Hebrew people. Foreign people was allowed. You can look it up. It's in Leviticus 25. We're not going to do it now. But that was in the context of a conquered people or extreme debt or, some kind of serious crime. It was basically like prison, and it was obviously preferable to execution. And even then, they must be treated well. All right? Remember, where had the Israelites just been right before this? Slaves in Egypt. So they understood all of this. They know how it felt. But what about slavery as we understand it? So that's indentured service. Like you are basically putting yourself in a position to be a slave. So what about when we think of that word slave? Why does it sting every time? Why does it hurt every time? Why does it sound rough every time? Well, obviously because for us we go back to slavery in America, or we go back to slave ships, or we go back to all of that. Well, God addresses that one. What we understand as slavery. Look at verse 16. Whoever steals a man and sells him. That's how we know it. And anyone found in possession of him, who's bought him, shall be what? Put to death. So, if you want to address what the Bible says about slavery, as most people in the English-speaking world understand slavery, you're put to death for it. End of question. That's what the Bible says. The Bible does not endorse slavery as the world likes to throw in the face of Christians all the time, not in the sense that we understand that word. Okay? Does not. That also includes kidnapping, by the way, clearly, and human trafficking, clearly. All right? So, the respectable goal of slavery would be verse 5, which I already read, but look back. Loving your master so much that you don't want to leave. And him loving you so much that you're family. That's the picture of Christ. That's what Paul meant when he said we are slaves to Christ. Like we love him so much, we don't want to leave. We're in the family now, and we're that's where we want to stay. And he loves us so much that he doesn't want us to leave. That's the picture, okay? So, verse 12, let's go on. Because we're looking at law and all, but there's the slavery section. Let's go on to striking or hitting or hurting somebody. Whoever strikes a man so that he dies shall be put to death. Okay, so you kill somebody, death penalty for you. But if he doesn't die, if he doesn't lie in wait for him, if it's not premeditated, but God let him fall into his hands, then I'll appoint for you a place for which he may flee. In other words, if it's an accident, if it's manslaughter, he can go somewhere. It's called a city of refuge. It's not here. That comes up later. But he gives a place where they can go and stay, kind of a sense of exile for a time period. But if a man willfully attacks another to kill him by cunning, take him from my altar and put him to death. Verse 15, whoever strikes his father or his mother shall be put to death. That means if you're at an act of violence against them, we already hit 16, so look at 17. Whoever cures his father or curses, his father or his mother shall be put to death. That means to invoke a spirit of hate against them. It almost means to literally produce a curse or attempt to curse them to death. It doesn't mean to say a bad word about them. Maybe you feel like the death penalty is a little bit stiff. Clearly, God's standard of family is different than yours. Who's wrong? Know what I'm saying? Not hating, just saying. And believe me, that one's heavy for me too. Okay. Basically, you obey the fifth commandment? Honor your parents, and you have a long life in the land. Is what he said. Now he's saying dishonor them, and your life is cut short. All right, verse 18, let's go on. When men quarrel, and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and the man does not die, but takes up his bed. In other words, they get in a fight, but nobody's killed. I got to put my glasses on, y'all. If the man rises again and walks outdoors with his staff, he who struck him shall be clear, only he shall pay for the loss of his time. In other words, if he's able to walk, but you've cost him work, then you got to cover his cost for work. And he shall have him thoroughly healed. Pay his medical bills. You get in a fight, you cause somebody to limp for a while, you pay for their missed work, and you pay for their medical bills. Verse 22, because we've already covered those, skip down. When men strive, fight together, and hit a pregnant woman. That means incidentally. That means if she's present and the fight bumps into her in some way, so that her children come out, but there's no harm. The one who hit her shall surely be fined, as the woman's husband shall impose on him, for he shall pay as the judges determine. So basically saying that if she gives birth prematurely, even if everything's okay, you owe the husband for that. You owe the husband for that if he chooses to impose it. He may not, but if he does, he may say no harm done. But if he chooses, you owe him, and the judges would determine how much. But there's a little side note here, by the way. Clearly, God cares for the unborn. Don't have to go racing down that road, but you know what I'm saying here? Clearly, he cares for the unborn in this scenario. But if there is harm, verse 23, then you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Basically, eye for eye means the punishment fits the crime. It does not mean you gouge out their eye if they gouge out yours, or you cut off their hand if they cut off yours. It doesn't mean that. It just, in our language, that would mean the punishment fits the crime. So it better make sure that whatever it is that you've done, that justice means punishment fits the crime. And the point of that is so things don't escalate. I mean, when you do a horrible crime to somebody, let's say you murder somebody's, or let's say you rape somebody's child, say something horrible, you know, and they go and they get caught, and they say, you're going to do 6 months and then you're free. What happens immediately? You have this sense of, I'll take law into my own hands. You want it to escalate. That's not good enough. So the whole point of this is God is saying, so that things don't escalate, eye for eye, law penalty fits the crime. Verse 28. Sorry, I've had a bug, so I'm trying not to cough in the mic. I'm going quick here. When an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall be stoned. and his flesh shall not be eaten by the owner of the ox, and shall not be liable. So in other words, if an animal gets out and it kills somebody, you put the animal to death, but the owner of the animal is not liable. But if the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, so if it's happened before, and its owner's been warned but has kept it not kept it in, this is actually more common in our world than you know. Except it's not an ox. What is it usually? Dog. This is the same idea as a violent dog that you know has attacked or killed a child or somebody that has got, and the owner knows it and he's done nothing about it, and it kills a man or a woman. The ox, in this case, shall be stoned, and its owner shall be put to death, both of them. If a ransom is imposed on him, so in other words, he's going to die unless a ransom is offered, and if that case is given, then he can be ransomed. If it goes to a man's son or daughter, he shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If it goes to a slave, male or female, the owner shall give their master 30 shekels, and the ox shall be stoned. When a man opens a pit, or when a man digs a pit and doesn't cover it, and somebody's ox or donkey falls in it, the owner of the pit is liable for that. Give money to its owner for the dead beast. Verse 35, when a man's ox butts another one, they go to two of them get in a fight, so that one dies. Then they shall sell the live ox and share its price, and the dead beast also they shall share. Or, if it's known that the ox has been accustomed to goring in the past, and its owner has not kept it in, he shall repay for the ox, and the dead beast shall be his. So he loses it all. Following all that? None of that sounds that bad, does it? That all sounds like it's fair. Sounds fair to me. Verse 1, 22, here we go. Stealing. If a man steals an ox or sheep and kills it or sells it, he shall repay 5 ox and 4 sheep. If a thief is found breaking in and is struck so that he dies. So somebody breaks in, you kill them in self-defense, there shall be no blood guilt for him. This is assuming it's at night. But if the sun is risen on him, and if it's daytime now, there shall be blood guilt for him, and he shall pay. And what he's saying here is if you have, even if you're being robbed, if you can plainly see the person, you shouldn't have to kill them. You ought to be able to defend yourself or run them off. If they come in the night and you're wrestling and you can't see what's going on and they die, remember, you don't have pistols here. All right? So it's not like an instant kill necessarily. All right? So he's saying if it comes during the daytime and you take them to death, then, hey, you went too far. We have the same rules. You know, how many times do we argue, was it truly self-defense? Did they go too far? You know, all that kind of stuff, right? Same thing. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. If the stolen beast is found alive in his possession, whether it is an ox or a donkey, he shall pay double. All right. So if a man causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed over, or lets his beast loose, and it feeds in another man's field, so if animals come and eat your crops, he shall make restitution. If fire breaks out and catches in thorns and it destroys a field, you got to make restitution. Verse 7, if a man gives his neighbor money or goods to keep safe and is stolen, if the thief is found, he's paying double. If the thief is not found, then the owner of the house needs to come near to God and show whether or not he's taking the money for himself. So you loan somebody, you give somebody something to watch for you, and it disappears. And he says, oh, it was stolen. And you can't find any thief that stole it. What's the assumption? You stole it. I gave it to you to take care of. You're claiming somebody stole it, but did you actually just steal it for yourself? How did that exactly go out? And it says, verse 9, for every breach of trust, whether it is for an ox, a donkey, a sheep, a cloak, or any kind of lost thing of which the one person says, this is it. In other words, one person says, this is yours, and the other person says, that's not mine. That's not what I gave you. The case of both parties comes before God. The one whom God condemns shall pay double to his neighbor. It doesn't tell us how that's worked out. The idea is that it comes to, you bring it before God in the judges of the time, or you bring it to the priest. The priest used to do a thing where they would cast lots, almost like rolling dice in a sense, and say, we trust God on the outcome here. All right? Verse 10, if a man gives to his neighbor a donkey or an ox or a sheep or any beast to keep safe, and it dies. So it's not stolen, but he's given him something to keep safe, and it's died or it's destroyed without anybody seeing it. So nobody saw what happened to it. Verse 11, an oath by the Lord shall be sworn between them both to see whether he is the one that's destroyed his neighbor's property. You broke it. The owner shall accept the oath, and he shall not make restitution. In other words, if somebody can say, as Jehovah is my witness, I did not break your stuff, then the owner has to accept that. If you can swear, not just swear by God, it means nothing to us. Back then, it's huge. If you bring Jehovah's name onto it and say, I swear by Jehovah's name, I did not do it, then the owner has to accept that and trust that God will handle it. Verse 12, but if it is stolen from him, he shall make restitution to its owner. If it's torn by beasts, let him be evidence. He shall not make restitution for what's been torn. So if it had been torn up or something by an animal, it's not his fault. If a man borrows anything from his neighbor and it's injured or dies, the owner will not be with it. He shall make restitution. If the owner was with it, he shall. All right, almost done here with this. If a man seduces a virgin who's not betrothed, now isn't this interesting that this is stuck in with stealing? If a man seduces a virgin who's not betrothed and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. If her father utterly refused, now in our world, we're like, you get her pregnant, and there was the push for that once upon a time. Here, it didn't even matter. If she's a virgin and you're with her, she's your wife. If her father utterly refuses to give her to you, he shall pay money equal to the bride price for virgins. So in other words, what he's saying here, the Bible's not endorsing sex outside of marriage or all that and just saying, well, it's fine as long as she's not a virgin. That's not what it's saying. What it's saying is when this happens to a virgin, a young one in particular, because that's what's implied, the father has a right to defend his daughter. Father has a right to defend his daughter, and you owe him the cost of marrying her, and he can still keep her from you. So you pay whatever that bride price was to marry her, and he'll either give you her or he doesn't. It's up to him. He doesn't have to, but you still pay for it. High level of respect for virginity, and the people were supposed to guard them from that. Let's keep going. I know it. I know it's a lot. It's all good, though. We're reading through it, and I hope so far you're seeing that everything we've read is good. It's good. Look at verse 18. Don't permit a sorceress to live. Now, I just said it's good. Now, that sounds horrible, right? Oh, she's a witch. Burn her. But that's what that means. That it says sorceress, but it's just like the word witch in the sense that it is a feminine word, but it's masculine and feminine in association. And the seriousness here of it is because idolatry and worship of pagan gods comes with it. And keep in mind, this is beforehand. They're all agreeing to this before. So, hey, if you're a witch at this point, a sorceress at this point, maybe you want to leave. You know what I'm saying? You don't got to stay. He's saying, we're going into this thing. They don't live. So it might be a good idea that they leave. Now, if they stay knowing that's the thing, then they're taking their life in their own hand. All right? Verse 19, whoever lies with an animal be put to death. That's pretty clear. It's cruelty. It defies God's design in nature. Verse 20, whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be devoted to destruction. That basically means you're following the path of the sorceress, and now you're making offerings to another god. 21, shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him. That means a foreigner. You were all foreigners in the land of Egypt. Don't mistreat any widow or fatherless child, orphans. If you do mistreat them, and they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will burn, and I will kill you. That is out of God's mouth. That is out of God's mouth. Now, you might be terribly offended by that unless you're a widow or an orphan. Then you probably appreciate that he loves you in that way. If you do something to hurt them or to oppress them, I will kill you. He says it outright. With the sword, and your wives shall become widows, and your children shall be. In other words, I'll make you just the same. And God makes all his people responsible for caring for the weak here and the disadvantaged. And God's clearly taking it personally, right? 25, if you lend money to any of my people with you who are poor, you shall not be like a money lender to them. You shall not exact interest from them. This is awesome. A loan is to help. You can't take interest. Wouldn't that be nice? A loan is actually designed to help. You cannot take interest. You cannot profit from the poor. If you ever take your neighbor's, talking about poor here still, the poor neighbor's cloak in pledge or collateral, hey, I'll give you my coat. You can hold it while I do whatever it is. If it's a poor person, he's saying in particular, return it to him before the sun goes down, for that's his only clothing, and it's his cloak for his body, and what else is he going to sleep? And if he cries to me, I will hear, I compensate. That's kind of frightening. 28, don't revile God, don't curse a ruler of your people. That's a dangerous one for us nowadays, isn't it? 29, you shall not delay to offer the fullness of your harvest and from your overflow of your possessions. In other words, he's saying, hey, don't hold on to your offerings. You know, I don't ever preach about giving. I'm not starting now unless we come to a text that talks about giving. But that's what this is talking about. It's saying, hey, if God's blessed you with something, don't withhold it. Give it. Like, don't wait a week. Don't wait 2 weeks. Don't sit on it 6 months. Give it. That's what he's saying. Firstborn of your sons shall give to me. That just means that you can go back and look at that. That was when they came out of Egypt, and God said, all your firstborns are given to me, but you redeem them by an offering. And Mary and Joseph do that in the New Testament. They take Jesus to the temple, and they bring 2 turtle doves as an offering. They're redeeming their firstborn. Verse 30, you shall do the same with your oxen, with your sheep, firstborns. 7 days it'll be with its mother. On the 8th day you offer it to me, or you could redeem it if it was a situation. 31, you shall be consecrated to me. Set yourself apart to me. Don't eat any flesh that's torn by beasts in the field. Throw it to the dogs. That one seems weird. But what he's getting at here is animals for consumption are to be humanely slaughtered. However that worked then, and however it works now, whatever, they're to be humanely slaughtered. You're not looking at a beast that's all ripped to pieces as food. You're not doing it. Don't eat meat just however you find it laying around. You are different. That's the whole point. You're different. You're not going to do it like other nations do it. You are different. Look at verse 1, 23. We're going on, but we're not going all the way. I promise. We're almost there. I promise. Verse 1. You shall not spread a false report. Don't tell lies. Don't spread lies. Shall not join hands with a wicked man and be a malicious witness. You shall not fall in with the many to do evil. You shall, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit siding with the many to pervert justice. We call that conspiracy. Call that conspiracy. Don't be involved in a conspiracy. If you have to stand up and be the one that's telling the truth, do it. Verse 3, nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit. You got to be fair. All the way around. Be fair. Don't just look at the poor and ignore the wealthy. The wealthy need justice too. Don't look at the wealthy and ignore the poor need justice too. Be fair. If you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, oh, this is the one that stings, you should bring it back to him. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying down under its burden, is carrying too much and it just sits down, shall refrain from leaving him with it. You shall rescue it. You shall rescue it with him, with the one who is doing it. The Jews shifted this to be about animal cruelty, and you can clearly get there, but that's not what it's talking about. Who is it talking about here? Enemies. It's not talking about the animal. It's talking about the enemy. Modern day scenario. I came up with this, and it makes me mad even saying it. You get on the freeway, and somebody comes zooming around you on the freeway, nearly runs you off the road, and you know them, and you can't stand them. And they flip you off as they go by. And about a mile or two down the road, they've blown a tire, and they're on the side of the road. What do? I know what I do. Be wrong, you know. What this text is saying is stop and help them change that tire and get going again. It's not talking about the donkey. This is talking about stopping to help the enemy. Jesus said it in Matthew 5:44, a very famous verse. What? Love your enemies. Same thing Jesus is coming to. Jesus told an illustration of that, the Good Samaritan. If you know it, cool. If you don't, go back and read it. It's in Luke 10. Verse 6, we just got a few more. You shall not pervert the justice due to your poor in a lawsuit. Keep far from a false charge and do not kill the innocent and the righteous. I will not acquit the wicked. You shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and subverts the cause of those who are on the right. Everybody's treated equally and justly and honestly. You shall not oppress a foreigner. You shall know the heart of a foreigner because you are foreigners in the land of Egypt. Justice is leveling the field here. I don't know if you see that. God elevates the foreigner, and he even elevates the enemy. God makes restoring the poor the responsibility of the wealthy and everybody else too. The thief is responsible to the victim. And the worst criminals are removed. Death penalty. Removed. Verse 10. For 6 years you shall sow your land and gather it in its field, but the 7th year let it rest. Let the land rest and lie fallow, that the poor of you may eat, and what they leave, the beasts of the field may eat. In other words, your property becomes theirs for a year to try to get back on their feet. You leave it alone. And then if whatever they don't take, the animals can have. And then he says, you shall do likewise with your vineyard and your orchard. Basically, trust God. Every 7 years, stop, trust God for the whole year. It belongs to God, not you. It's his earth. He can provide, and let the poor have a shot at restoring their lives for a whole year. Verse 12, 6 days do your work, but on the 7th day rest. We've already talked about this, the Sabbath. That your ox and your donkey may have rest, and that your son, your servant woman, and the alien even may be refreshed. That's a key addition to the Sabbath, is that rest is supposed to refresh you. What do you do to be refreshed? How do you rest in a way that's refreshed? I know Brittany goes hiking all the time. You know, it's good. That might sound like work to most of you, but to her, it's good for her soul. Maybe you go ride a bike. Maybe you go take a walk. Maybe you go drive. That's usually mine. I go explore in my Jeep. It's fun. Verse 13, pay attention to all I've said to you. Make no mention of the names of other gods. Don't even let it be heard on your lips. In other words, if you're saying it, you're giving reverence to it. 3 times in a year, keep these feasts. All right, this is the last. Keep the feast. I'm in verse 15. Keep the feast of unleavened bread. That's the Passover that we're going to celebrate next week when we do Upper Room. And he tells you a month of Abib, for in it you came out of Egypt. It's the month you came out. None shall appear before me empty-handed. You shall keep the feast of harvest. That's Shavuot. That's the Pentecost we celebrated last week. Last week was that, of the first fruits of your labor. Excuse me, what you sow in the field. And the third one is the feast of ingathering, or Sukkot, Tabernacles it was called, at the end of the year. These 3 times a year, verse 17, all your males come to me, appear before me. So everybody had to come to the temple or the tabernacle on those 3 times. 3 times a year, everybody had to come to the temple or tabernacle. Why? Because one year, when everybody does that, God himself is going to be there. And he was. The year we call 33, I guess, AD, whenever Jesus was there himself. That's why he's drawing them all back. Don't offer blood of my sacrifices with anything leavened. In other words, bring unleavened bread. If you make a sacrifice of an animal, eat it or burn it. Don't leave it. And the best of your first fruits of the ground shall bring in the house of God. Last one, you shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. There's some discrepancy and some disagreement on that one, but the bottom line, I think, is that I know this is where no meat and dairy came from. You ever wonder why the Jews do that? It's from this verse, no meat and dairy. So Molly and I were in Israel, and there was a pizza place in a mall, and it literally had cheese pizza and meat pizza, but not together. Couldn't have cheese and meat on the same piece of pizza because they're trying to honor this law. Whatever it means, it's to separate them from being like everybody else. Goat milk and goat meat were probably the most common food in the desert where they are, so it's separating them from others in the way they handle that. So, let me be done here. The most common phrase you hear among young people, and if you've ever raised a kid, you know this, life's not fair. What's the response to life's not fair? Or I'm sorry, that's not fair. That's what they say. The response is what? Life's not fair, right? We always hear them say, oh, that's not fair, that's not fair. And the response is always, life's not fair. The truth is, life's not fair. And life's not fair because of sin. And what God is trying to paint a picture of, I don't know if you got it, but how many of those laws were negative? They were beautiful. And I don't think anybody would look at any of that and go, well, this is a horrible society. That sounds fantastic. He's creating an environment of fair. He's creating an environment of care and unity and all of these things that we want. And the reason we don't have it is because of sin. We break the laws. Therefore, we're sinners. And the beauty of the gospel is that for those who put their faith in Christ, there is justice, but you're not the one paying it. He's the one paying it. He's taking the justice, the penalty due to you, to me, to everyone on the cross. That's the beauty of the gospel. And either you're going to stand before the Lord one day and recognize that he took justice for you, or you're going to face justice yourself. And we're going to see how it works out. See how it works out. And I'm praying that your focus is on him and that you say, Jesus, no, you pay it for me. I will give it to you now because you're the God I've got to stand before anyway. Stand with me now if you don't mind. Last thought as we close, I always give you one to think about. Are there ways you withhold justice from certain people or ignore it for what feels like valid reasons? Such as they flip me off as they pass by. They deserve it, you know. Just something to think about. I'm thinking about it myself, and it's heavy enough in my own guts over here. So let's pray, and then we'll sing another song and move on with the service. Lord, thank you for this word today. Is a lot. Man, we looked at a lot, nearly 2.5 chapters. But it's beautiful. It's your word. You have eternally placed it there. That what we just read is over 3,000 years old. That is mind-blowing to me. It's over 3,000 years old, and you put it there for us to have, to us to read, us to know and to understand. We're not bound to the law. We're bound to Christ. We look at the law and we recognize that, man, Christ in us compels us to live a certain way, just as your law compelled your people then to live a certain way. Help us live in a way that glorifies you and, Lord, that honors you and that brings justice, not just to society, but to you, that people would respond to you and the sacrifice that you made on the cross. Lord, I thank you for those who are here, and I pray if anybody hasn't done it, that today is the day they would just confess to you in their own words, in their own way, that their life is yours. I say these things in Jesus' name, amen.